All right, I think we are ready to get started. Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar on what to know about your student loans right now. We're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Candace Lofton, and I am counsel with the Student Borrower Protection Center. And today we're going to walk through many of the recent updates in the student loan system and how you can access debt relief. A little background on SBPC. We're a national nonprofit organization dedicated to alleviating the burden of student loan debt in this country. We engage in a mix of advocacy, policymaking, and litigation strategy to rein in industry abuses, protect borrowers' rights, and advance economic opportunity for the next generation of students. I'm really excited to speak with you all today. There's a lot of updates that we have to provide you guys. One note about questions, if you all could place your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. My amazing executive director, Mike Pierce, is on, and he's going to collect them and we'll answer them for you at the end. So thank you in advance. All right, so the next hour, we are going to talk about a bunch of different student debt topics. These include updates on the post-election proposed debt relief rules that have been published for public comment. And then we'll also discuss the different payment plan options that you have so you can figure out what's best for you. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So remember, put your questions in the Q&A feature and Mike will gather them for us. All right, let's start with post-election updates. Something that's probably at the top of everyone's mind is, will President-elect Donald Trump actually dismantle the Department of Education? So to start, during his campaign and since he's been elected, Donald Trump has vehemently stated that he would dismantle the Department of Education. This would harm the most marginalized communities in America who rely on the department, not only for student loans, but for other educational programs like Head Start. Advocates have been pounding the pavement in DC to ensure that borrowers are protected from this plan and that the department stands. We are focused on making the department better, not completely dismantling it. So borrowers should be prepared for anything, but know that we are working hard. All right, so moving on, because of the election and the lawsuits that are currently being litigated, there has been a lot of confusion, understandably, about the state of the student loan debt system. So we're going to do a recap, buckle up. So you may remember back in June of 2023, the Supreme Court struck down Biden's initial debt relief plan. After that, he vowed to use the Higher Education Act to pursue relief for borrowers. During this time, advocates met with the Department of Education to participate in what's called negotiated rulemaking to discuss the creation of proposed rules that are written based on the Higher Education Act authority for borrowers to obtain relief. The first round of proposed rules were released in the spring of this year. They are not yet finalized, and they focus on people who have been stuck in the system for a long time and have faced a lot of problems due to compounding interest. If you remember, when Biden also announced his Plan B student loan debt relief plan, recently, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey sued to block that plan in a Georgia district court back in September. This lawsuit was to stop the implementation of the rules that we just discussed that are not final or in effect yet. The Georgia District Court judge dismissed this case, but a Missouri judge immediately ordered a preliminary injunction hours later. So these rules, if they are finalized, won't be able to go into effect until this lawsuit is actually resolved. The second round of rules that focus on hardship were published for public comments, which are due by December 2nd, 2024, this year. You can submit a public comment using this link that will also drop in the chat. While we're not sure what will happen with the next administration, it's crucial that we demonstrate that debt relief is still important and necessary. So please submit your comments, tell your stories, and let them know that this is important for you. and we'll drop that link in the chat as well. All right, so we've talked a bit about the future and what may or may not happen, and now we're going to go ahead and discuss what you can do right now to manage your student loans and access cancellation programs. So we'll start with discussing the income-driven repayment or IDR plans. So first, real quick, we'll ask what repayment plans are there. So you have multiple options here. But IDR is usually the most affordable option for borrowers because your payments will be based on your income instead of your loan balance, which means your payments can be as low as $0. The standard repayment plan that you see in the left-hand corner requires you to pay the same amount for 10 years or longer if you have consolidated your loans. With the extended repayment plan, you can also pay the same amount that is up to 25 years, which lowers the payments, but you also have to owe more than $30,000. The graduated repayment plan starts low and then increases payments every 2 years to pay off the loans in 10 years or up to 30 years with consolidated loans. Borrowers should make sure to look into each plan, use the calculator on Ed's website, and decide which is best for you based on your financial state and your goals. But we're going to spend most of our time talking about the bottom right-hand corner here, which is the IDR plans. All right, so let's get into how income-driven repayment plans work. So the income-driven repayment plan is a category of federal student loan repayment plans where a borrower has a right to pay a certain percentage of their discretionary income. It's calculated according by the Department of Education, their own formula, and it goes towards their federal student loans. Typically, under these plans, borrowers are entitled to cancellation after 20 or 25 years of qualifying payments. The original IDR plans were the income-based repayment plan, the income contingent repayment plan, the saving on a valuable education plan, which was formerly revised pay as you earn or repay, and pay as you earn or pay. Under these plans, borrowers are entitled to cancellation after being in repayment for 20 or 25 years, depending on their situation. All right. Currently, right now, only Parent Plus borrowers who consolidate are able to access the IBR plan at this time. Because of the lawsuits against SAVE going on, the department is working to reopen Pay, which was closed to new borrowers in July of this year. So borrowers who are enrolled in SAVE but want to switch to a different plan to earn that credit towards different forgiveness programs can do so. So moving forward, we'll also discuss the newest IDR plan, SAVE, and how that provides additional benefits to borrowers. And although the plan is currently tied up in litigation, there's still information that borrowers need to know. Okay. So the SAVE plan is the newest and most affordable IDR plan for borrowers. It replaced REPAY last year and it raised the income exemption from 150% to 225%, which decreases the monthly payments for borrowers. It eliminates 100% of remaining interest after making a payment, and it excludes spousal income. It cuts payments in half for folks who only had undergraduate debt, and it offered a shorter timeline for cancellation. Like we've been saying, unfortunately, right now, SAFE has been blocked, but we'll get into that on this next slide here. So 18 states sued the Biden administration over SAVE and is currently blocked from implementation based on a decision back in July. Borrowers who have already had their debt canceled will not have balances reinstated, but those who enrolled in SAVE are now in a forbearance, which does not count towards PSLF or other forgiveness. You can also still apply to get into the SAVE repayment plan, but you will be placed on a forbearance as well, and that does not accrue interest when you apply for it. When we review the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, we'll talk more about these options and how it might affect what you apply for. All right. Next, we will share information on the IDR account adjustment. So remember I said that after 20 or 25 years in repayment, folks could get their debt canceled. Well, a couple of reports that came out a few years ago have detailed that servicers had no way of tracking progress toward these 20 or 25-year thresholds, and they have been routinely steering people into forbearance and deferment instead of offering them IDR plans. To rectify this, the Department of Education announced something called the IDR account adjustment. So the department is basically doing a one-time audit of all federally held accounts to see how close people are to different cancellation thresholds. What counts towards the adjustment? It's anytime you were in repayment status. So forbearance, anytime you were in deferment prior to 2013, credit before consolidation. Any credit that you get also applies to the PSLF program if you are seeking PSLF. The department has still not run the account adjustment for folks that have not reached the cancellation thresholds, but they have stated that they are aiming to do so soon. So be on the lookout for that. All right, next we are going to get into public service loan forgiveness. So in 2007, Congress created the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program to help public service workers who were struggling with student loan debt and to make sure that future students and graduates wouldn't be deterred from entering public service work by their student loan balance. To put it simply, PSLF is the promise that if a borrower works in public service and makes payments for 10 years, the remainder of their debts will be forgiven. So typically there are 4 specific criteria. First, you need to have a direct loan. That's one of several federal loan types. If you have a FFEL loan, the Federal Family Education Loan Program, you are able to consolidate those loans into direct loans so that they can be eligible for PSLF. Second, you need to be in the correct repayment plan, which for the program is generally an income-driven repayment plan. Third, you need to work full-time in the public service field, which could be local, state, federal, or tribal government, a 501c3 nonprofit, or certain other nonprofits depending on the work that they do. You need to work full-time, which is defined as 30 hours a week or more. Finally, you need to make 120 qualifying payments or 10 years worth of payments on your loans while meeting all other requirements. All right, so for the first requirement, only direct loans qualify for PSLF. Direct loans have been the main type of federal loan since 2010. So if you took out a loan since then, it likely qualifies. Whether or not it's sub or unsubsidized, they qualify. If you have an older loan, a federal family education loan, or FFEL, or a Perkins loan, those do not qualify. You can consolidate these loans though into a new direct loan, which is like refinancing with the federal government, and it pays off your old federal loan and replaces it with the new federal direct loan. When you do this, you will get the weighted average of qualifying payments that you made on those direct loans, which just changed this past July. For the second requirement, your direct loan has to be in the right repayment plan, which is generally an IDR plan like we discussed a bit ago. You can remain on the standard plan, but remember that that plan is made so that you can pay off your entire balance of the loan over 10 years anyway. So in many circumstances, the IDR plans will offer lower payments and you will have debt forgiveness in 10 years. It doesn't matter how much you're paying, just that it's the right plan. The third requirement to get public service loan forgiveness, you have to work in public service. So the focus is on your employer, not necessarily your role. You can work at a government organization, so city, state, federal, tribal. You can work at a 501c3 nonprofit. or certain other nonprofits. You also have to work full-time, which has been defined as 30 hours a week, or what your employer defines as full-time. The 30 hours can be with more than one employer too. Finally, you must make 120 qualifying payments. These are payments made in full, partial payments made within 15 days of due dates, and only prepaid or lump sum payments up to 12 months. Right? So here are some things you should do if you want to pursue PSLF. First, check to see if you work for a qualified employer. Then check the type of loans you have, consolidate if needed, and then certify your employment with the PSLF form. We recommend doing this once a year and anytime you change public service jobs, but you can also wait until the 10-year point and fill it out for all of your current and past employment. And the reason we tell people to update their employment every year is because there's been issues with the PSLF program. So completing the help tool online once a year will help you catch any mistakes as soon as they happen. But it's up to you. You can use the PSLF help tool to find out if your employer is a qualified employer. You'll need to go to find your employer identification number to do this. You can search in the database, and if your employer appears, you know it's qualifying employment. If it doesn't appear, you may still be able to qualify. It could mean that no one has applied from your employment. So you can still apply using the paper application and be the first one. All right. To find out if you have the right type of loans, you will also need to visit your dashboard at studentaid.gov. This will have a list of all of the federal loans you have. If you have anything other than a direct loan, please consolidate. You probably want to consolidate as soon as you can. A direct loan just says the word direct next to it. Like I said earlier, this includes subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Direct. You just want to look for the word direct. Other loans like Fell and Perkins need to be consolidated, remember. Remember to use the PSLF help tool to certify your employment with the department. You can do this electronically with your employer's email address or download and print a copy to be signed. You can certify anytime with a public service employer since October 1st, 2007. So if you have done so, the department will automatically review your account for PSLF. All right, Parent Plus borrowers. So these borrowers are parents that took out loans for their children's education, but the loans are in their own names, the parents. They are generally eligible for PSLF. The steps that Parent Plus borrowers have to take are similar, but can be a little different. Like all of the borrowers seeking PSLF, Parent Plus borrowers must certify their employment with the department using the PSLF help tool. They also should weigh their options between staying in the standard plan or consolidating to get on the ICR plan. Unfortunately, the ICR plan is the only IDR plan that Parent Plus borrowers are eligible for, and it's the least generous. So use the repayment calculator tool at studentaid.gov to learn what's the ballpark range for your payments and which plan might be most affordable for you. All right, save and forbearance credit. Save forbearance and PSLF credit. So time spent in save forbearance due to the ongoing lawsuits does not count towards public service loan forgiveness, unfortunately. So borrowers have a few options. You can enroll in another plan that counts towards PSLF, like the IBR plan. You can wait and see if Ed allows this time to count towards PSLF. You can use the PSLF buyback program to buy back time spent in forbearance. but this option only exists if after you have accrued 120 payments, 120 months of eligible employment. So the buyback program only applies, you can only use it if you have already accrued 120 months of eligible employment. So let's do a quick recap of how you get on track for PSLF. You can check your loan type. You can consolidate if you have non-direct loans. You can use the PSLF help tool to get credit for public service work. Parent Plus loan holders should also decide between the standard plan and the ICR plan to see what's more affordable. And remember, weigh your options on choosing a repayment plan or like Save or any of the other ones. All right. We'll do some important takeaways before we get to Q&A. I see there's guys are dropping them in the chat. So check what type of loans you have to check your eligibility for different programs. Consolidate your loans to make sure that they are eligible for PSLF if needed. Use the PSLF help tool to log your employers and see if they are eligible for PSLF. Visit cancelmystudentdebt.org for more information. Beware of scams. As you can see, there was a lot of things going on. The student loan debt world changes every day. So be careful. The department will never call you and ask you to pay a certain amount of money to get debt relief. Neither will your servicer. So be aware of scams. Please do not give out your information if you are not certain that it is your servicer or the Department of Education. People are looking to take advantage of people, especially around the holidays. So please be careful. File complaints. If you have issues, please file complaints. Here are a few places that you can file those complaints. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Federal Student Aid Ombudsman, some state ombudsman and state attorneys general have places where you can file complaints. You can also visit cancelmystudentdebt.org. We'll drop that in the chat as well. So visiting these places to file complaints, but the more complaints that each of these entities receive, the more likely they're able to investigate, take action. If they receive a lot of complaints about a servicer or anyone in the student loan world, they will actually go after them if they have a lot. So make sure you file complaints if you have problems. Yeah, so I think, all right. I know that was a lot of information, and we have plenty of time for Q&A, like I said, so we will get into that.
All right. We got a whole bunch of questions, Candace. Thank you for all
Right.
of that amazing information. And I'm going to try to take these and maybe group some of the similar ones together and tee you up a few softballs here before we get into the more complicated ones. One is, since SAVE is in forbearance, is it possible to transfer loans under SAVE to IBR right now? If so, how we do that?
So you want to reach out to your servicer. Yes, I believe a plan you can, while it's in forbearance, if you are looking to get forgiveness in another program, you can reach out to your servicer and ask them about transferring to another repayment plan.
And there should be some more repayment plans coming online soon, so just keep going to studentaid.gov for more information. There is a bunch in the works to try to provide people with more options, but that SAVE forbearance isn't charging you interest. So if you're not trying to get on track for public service loan forgiveness, it might make sense to just sit still.
Yep.
Okay, what was the website you mentioned to check what kind of student debt you have?
Studentaid.gov. I believe I can put it in the chat. Studentaid.gov, go to your dashboard. It should be the first thing that pops up, and you can check what type of loans you have. Studentaid.gov.
Will your PowerPoint be available for those of us who missed the first minutes of this presentation?
Yeah, I think we can send it in a post follow-up email that we send. We probably could.
And a recording of this webinar will also be up on our YouTube channel at the conclusion of the webinar. Okay, let's do a couple more here. How does one do the buyback?
Mike, I might have to let you take this one.
Sure. So the answer is it doesn't work great. Right now, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. Contacting your servicer and requesting a buyback is the right way to initiate that process. But there's more information on studentaid.gov about how it works. I think it's important to know that right now the government's not processing buybacks unless you are at 120 months or more. That's part of how they're prioritizing the workflow to try to get people out of debt if they're eligible for debt relief. That also really sucks for folks that are midstream working the way towards 120 and just want some certainty that the months that they are in the save forbearance, for example, can eventually count. If you are struggling to access the buyback, if you're struggling to get straight answers from your student loan company, I would recommend submitting a complaint. Candace flashed the link up on cancelmystudentdebt.org for all the different places to submit a complaint. But if you're getting bad information from your servicer, submit a complaint. If you're getting conflicting or confusing information or the system itself isn't working properly, I would go to the Federal Student Aid Ombudsman because they sit over top of both the education department systems and also the private companies that are advising you. All right, let's do a few more here. I'm a retired teacher with a very small pension, and I earned a small income as a part-time realtor in 2024. I make significantly less than my husband. Should we file married separate for income purposes, student loans?
Well, with the SAVE program, you don't have to list your spouse's income if you want to use that to lower your payments. So that might be the best thing for you to do. Should we file married separate for income purposes? Yeah, Mike, I don't know if you wanted to add.
I would just say that generally we don't offer personal tax advice too. It's helpful to talk to a tax professional because sometimes you're giving other things up by filing separately, and then it may turn out that your student loan payment is not saving some money on your student loan payment is not the best thing for your financial circumstance. But yeah, there are income-driven repayment plans that will let you have a lower payment if you file separately. Others will not. Obviously, the SAVE plan is still tied up in court, so it's not as clear-cut of a set of decisions. But I would talk to a tax professional. Anybody should be able to advise you on that because they'll have a better understanding of what you're giving up, not just what you're getting. Okay, here's another one. This one's a little bit more complicated. I'm waiting on consolidation number 2 for Parent Plus loans. I have a couple questions. For a first consolidated loan recently completed with Advantage. I just sent out my second paper application to MOHELA. I heard about the MOHELA lawsuit days after mailing that application. Should I immediately do a final third consolidation out of MOHELA just because MOHELA? And then B, should I still bother to apply for an income-driven payment plan or forgiveness?
Mm,
Want to try to pull that apart?
Yeah, so the first consolidated loan. Listen out, but I heard about Mahila. Oof, yeah.
So what I think this borrower was asking in part is whether using a consolidation to be able to change your servicer is a good way to go about getting away from MOHELA. It doesn't sound like you're wrapping any new loans into your first or second consolidation here. You're just going to take a third one to wrap all those loans together and move them somewhere else. There's probably some benefit to not having MOHELA as your student loan company, but there's also a cost to it. Every time you consolidate your loans, the government rounds your interest rate up to the nearest quarter of a point. So you'll be paying slightly higher interest, and you probably don't want to do that if you're sensitive to how much interest you're paying. It also takes time, and having some certainty in an updated payment count, especially at this moment with the administration changing, might be worth something to you too. So again, we're not here to give out personal financial advice. That's like a very specific set of circumstances. But I would say for most people, most of the time, extra consolidations just to change your servicer probably aren't worth it because you are going to actually pay more on your student loan to do that.
Thank
Okay, I got a good, this is a question we get often. It's a good save forbearance question. I'm 1 year away from loan forgiveness with PSLF. The government put my loans in forbearance since I was on the SAVE plan, and therefore I have not been able to make payments. What have you heard about the future of the PSLF forgiveness under the new administration? That's one. And two, do you have any insight into what to do to best position borrowers close to forgiveness? I've tried to apply for the IBR so that I can continue making payments, but my payment plan has not been changed yet. Do you want to take number one or number two?
I can do number two because I haven't heard much about the future of it. It's law. I don't think it's going anywhere, but number two, so we tell people that when you're that close to forgiveness, you may want to consider changing plans. Um, the save forbearance is not counting towards PSLF right now. So if you try to apply for IBR, I don't know what the reason is, and we can't, like Mike said, we can't speak to individual circumstances, but you should it may be in your best interest to try to switch to a different plan. And they're, like Mike mentioned earlier, they're reopening some, so keep on the watch for that since you're so close.
I think that's totally right. And then the only other thing I would add is the slide that's still up here. If you have tried to apply for IBR and you can't get in it, submit a complaint. Submit a complaint with the Federal Student Aid Ombudsman. They may be able to actually manually change your payment plan for you or instruct a servicer to do it. Submit a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They are the federal agency that oversees the loan servicers, so they regulate the private companies. I generally recommend people do both of those things. And if you have a good state with the student loan ombudsman, they might also be able to help as well. There's more information on our website on cancelmystudentdebt.org about who to complain to, and particularly a roster of state student loan ombudsmen that might be able to help you. All right, you want to do maybe one more, Candace? I think
Yeah.
we're running through these questions. Okay. If I complete a buyback into my public service retirement job, and for retirement purposes, I'm granted years of service back and return to public work, would I then qualify for PSLF going forward? So the answer is, could you do a buyback to get credit for past work you performed and return to public service work and then get credit for PSLF going forward? The answer is I think that the timing of that sequence matters a little bit here. I don't know that they'll be able to process a buyback for you unless you have already certified some public service employment. There are still sort of new rules and guidance being put in place at the Education Department about how the buyback program works. And right now, they're not processing anybody who is not at 120 months of public service work. So you have to do this a little bit with an eye towards future policy, and there's some risk there. You could go back to public service work. You could work there for however many months you think get you in your back of the envelope math up to 120, certify that service, and then use the buyback the rest of the way to get across the finish line. You have to do it in that sequence. You can't buy back first and then get a job. So doesn't mean that's always going to be the case. I think we're going to see some more changes around the buyback program over time. We also don't know what a new administration is going to do with the buyback program, but it's important to note that that is part of regulations. It's not just an executive action. And so it would involve a years-long rulemaking process to make any changes to it. I don't think we expect that there's going to be major changes to the buyback program in the near term. But that's a big life decision. And so I think you just need to think really hard about whether going back to work is right for you and the timing of all of that, whether you're actually going to gain 10 years or 12 years of public service from your prior job and you just need employment to be able to apply for debt relief. That's a different calculus than getting halfway there and having to work another 5 years. All right, I think we've hit nearly all of these. You want to close us out, Guinness?
Yes, yes. So thank you all for attending. Appreciate you all. If you have any more questions, like Mike said, you can follow up on cancelmystudentdebt.org. You can reach out to SBPC. You can reach out to your ombuds. But thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope this was helpful and have a great evening. Happy Thanksgiving.